Hi, I'm Cheyenne Bartz with Washburn's Advanced General Botany, here to give you a quick identification guide to Kansas grasses, sedges, and rushes. Prairies used to be the continent's largest continuous ecosystem, spanning over 165 million acres in North America. They are one of the most complicated and diverse ecosystems in the world. Currently, the vast majority of what remains is located in the Flint Hills of Kansas. They provide habitat and food for wildlife, game, pollinators, and livestock. Their thick cover act like filters, purifying water and slowing runoff, and they also transfer moisture to the air. Their deep roots help reduce soil erosion and store carbon, offsetting atmospheric carbon dioxide. Graminoids, or grass-like plants, are responsible for 80% of the foliage, up to 4 to 60 different species. Before we get into identification, let's look at the anatomy real quick. First, we have the main stem, or column, followed by the leaves, or blade, with parallel venation, usually quite thin and long, and then the floral part, which we call a spikelet. There are different arrangements. Here we have raceme, panicle, and then a spike. And we'll get into more detail with the floret and the leaf in further slides. But real quick, let's go over the roots. We have rhizomes, where they will be connected underneath the soil, stolons, where they will be connected above the soil, and then a fibrous root system. The graminoids here are going to be Poaceae, or grasses, Cyperaceae, or sedges, and Juncaceae, or rushes. Looking out and trying to identify a particular species can be quite intimidating, but if you can break it down to the three main families, then it can be a lot easier. One key to remember is that sedges have edges. So if you roll the culm or the stem in your fingers and feel a triangular edge shaped, it's going to be a sedge. Rushes are going to be round, and grasses are also going to be circular. So one easy identification between grasses and rushes are going to be the nodes on grasses and the fact that they're completely hollow. So if you break them open and it's hollow, it's a grass. Rushes also often have pith inside, so they'll have a solid stem. Another one that's easy to use for identification between the three is the ligule and the sheath. Grasses are going to have an open sheath and usually have hairy or paper-like ligules. So this whole area where the blade attaches to the stem is going to be a lot more open and just larger. Whereas sedges and rushes are going to be much more fused to the stem and tighter to the blade itself. So the sheath on sedges is going to be closed, and the ligule is fused to the blade. And on rushes, the ligule is wrapped and fused to the stem, so it's really tight in here. And oftentimes the sheath is open but overlapping, so it's kind of hard to tell if it's open or closed. But if you look at the ligule where it actually comes up to the blade, it's a lot easier. The other thing with the rushes and the blades is that oftentimes they're rolled, and they're almost always going to be more basal, so they're going to be located towards the bottom of the stem or the the bottom of the stem or the soil itself. With grasses, they're going to have two alternate leaves, one on each side of the stem. Sedges are going to have three, or depending on what shape or edge they have, but it's usually more than two, and they'll also be alternate. And then the rush can be varying, so it's a little bit hard, but make sure to just look to see if it's basal or growing up more along the stem itself. Another identifying tool we can use is actually looking at the seed head of grasses and graminoids. The flowers or seed head in graminoids can also help in identification. Here we see the main types of inflorescence or overall shapes. There's the spike, the raceme, and the panicle. The flowers themselves are going to differ in each family, with grasses usually being perfect, having male and female parts, as well as rushes. However, cyperaceae or sedges can have both imperfect and perfect flowers. The perianth, or what we would normally see in flowers as the petals and sepals, are going to actually just be two little bracts in grasses, or one in cyperaceae, and usually 6 altogether in juncaceae. The seeds itself, if you have a specimen with seeding heads, are going to be just one little seed for grass, and usually for cyperaceae and sedges, however, they'll be a little bit larger. But with juncaceae or rushes, they're going to be many, many seeds in one little capsule. Here's just a couple of different grasses that are commonly found. One easy thing to do is where you actually have found the specimen that you're looking at. Grasses are usually going to be in more dry and open sunny areas. Here you can see some cool season grasses, or grasses that flower more in the spring. We have Canadian wild rye, and you can see the clear spike here. It's often what people think of. And then smooth brome with more of a panicle. Here we have side goat grama, and you can see the racemes here. And then big blue stem, our state grass. And here you can see one of the most identifying parts of the big blue stem. These two are also warm season grasses, so you'll find them flowering more in the summer and fall, and are oftentimes more easy to identify during that time. Here's some different cyperaceae or sedges. You'll usually find these in more cool areas or shaded areas. And you'll notice here that it's pretty easy to identify between the seed heads. You'll have a larger cluster, even in the smaller ones, than the poaceae. Here's just 2 examples of some common ones that we have. Here's fescue sedge and Davis's sedge. And generally they flower in the spring, so it's easier to identify during that time. Here's a couple examples of the juncaceae or rushes. They're usually found in much more moist or wet environments and very sunny. Here we have the soft stem bulrush and its seed head, and then the inland rush and its seed head. And if you can see, if you look really closely, you'll see, and you can count all 6 of their little bracts here, which makes it a little bit easier to identify. If you look at my next video, I will talk about how you can use a dichotomous key and some internet tools to identify down to the species. Thanks for listening.